whatever. And I'm a busy guy, and I don't see why I need to cry. I'm happy not crying. I feel special not crying that much, to be honest. Well, let's see. What do you got, Charlie?
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Charlie Carrel, and I am not being introduced by Jungle because he fumbled the ball 16 times. My poker story is that I turned $50 and I ran the numbers, and I think I made around 10 million net profit, but that's for my investors and me included. So, do with that information what you will. I like to dedicate myself towards doing as much good in the world as possible because I think that is the best way to be selfish, is to be selfless. I think the idea of being selfish but not selfless is outdated, is anachronistic and dumb. And around 5 years ago, I stepped away from poker, maybe like 90%. And I stopped playing. I was at the peak of my career. I was on an unreal upswing. And I decided to dedicate myself towards the spiritual path and the philanthropic path and the business path because I felt like that was the way I could do the most good in the world.
All right, me and Charlie share that idea of the ultimate conclusion of selfishness is in fact selflessness. At least philosophically, that makes sense. It's hard to really, work that out in the actual scheme of things, but we'll get into that a little bit. And I'd also like to mention that Charlie has a bunch of unique life experiences as well as ways of dealing with things. He definitely does some controversial things, such as, well, we'll get into a couple. He's got a couple on COVID and the other one, LG. I always fuck up these
LGBT, we go in
acronyms.
that direction.
LGBT. We'll talk about it a little bit just for the hell of it, but whatever. Let's talk about some poker first because we're getting a little off topic. All right, so Charlie, tell us a bit about your poker career that you made over $10 million in or $12 million in, especially while you're not really using Sims or anything like that. Tell us about this path because most people just have to rely on Sims these days, and it seems like you're a little bit of a prodigy in.
Yeah, and it's worth noting, I started playing 10 years ago, and 10 years ago, everyone was telling me how tough poker was in comparison to the years before. They're like, there's no way you can go from zero to hero. There's no way you can go from rags to riches. Those days are done. And I took that as a personal challenge, and I never had any coaching. I never watched much like training, apart from I did watch the Grips Bankroll Challenge. And that's what kind of inspired me to make my own bankroll challenge because I just watched that over and over and over and over again.
Which one?
There's a guy called Evan Jarvis. Shout out to the OG Grips. And he did a bankroll challenge from $50 to $10,000. And I remember watching it, and I would watch an episode every couple of hours whilst I was grinding. And it would just be so helpful for me to see all of those like small decisions and hear his thought process. And that's the only thing that kind of like helped me form my idea of range analysis. Other than that, my whole career was trial and error. And I really believe that if somebody wants to learn something truly and fully, they can't just be told what to do. They have to embody that knowledge by actually doing it themselves. In the same way as a spiritual journey, you can be told that we're all one, but you don't really fully believe it until you go in deep into meditation or you blast yourself with some DMT or whatever you want to do. And in poker, if you ain't finding those like 3x pot bluff shove punts that are just terrible burning money in the early stages of your career because the solver tells you not to, you're not going to understand why that doesn't work and why maybe some of them are actually genius. And so a lot of my career, I just, I was in groups. I was in like Skype groups, and I'd always be posting hands. I'd probably post like 30 hands a day to other people being like, what do you think of this creative line? What do you think of that creative line? And that is just the way that I learned. And this is actually what I've now manufactured for my community as well. Just like always trying to think of creative ways. And there's a funny thing that I've noticed is like whenever I put out a challenge for Twitch or something like that, or for YouTube, the pools that I coach in change dramatically. So when I first started doing like 10 NL Zoom on my bankroll challenge, I was like, oh, everyone's c-betting way too much on these dry boards. Try just raising small and everyone just folds. And then everyone started doing that. So the meta was then to start three betting when they started doing that. And now you can even see like highlights of my students because, and I'll play against them without knowing they're my students. And they'll just be min betting spots. They'll be over betting spots in like really weird places that other people don't. And it's because I incentivize and encourage people to be as creative as possible, knowing that sometimes the creativity is going to kick you in the ass, but getting that database of knowledge of what works and what doesn't work. So when you're in the future playing against other people that haven't tried these weird spots, you're the one that's got the reps in and they're not. And I think that plus live tells was the secret to my success.
I think there's a lot of good stuff in there, and definitely the cultivating the mindset of encouraging creativity, encouraging well, creativity plus, thinking for your own self is something that I heavily endorse. I do think that specifically creativity by itself without structure is not very good.
Agree.
As
Yeah, I
far
agree.
as from an artistic perspective, it can be interesting, although I don't really, thinking about it, I don't really endorse that much. I endorse artistic creativity, but but preferably with structure, and purpose, which, actually those kinds of artists inspired me to become a bit of an artist.
Yeah, like Picasso knew
And
he was going to paint a face. He just didn't know how it was going to look.
I guess that makes sense. Well, that's another topic. But anyway, yeah, if you're too creative in poker, it can certainly backfire. You want to have some logical framework to work with as well. But absolutely trying new lines and exploring the possibilities of what might actually be good is an important mindset behind doing lots of things that will yield extra money in the long term, especially if your games aren't against GTO wizards, which if they are, why are you playing them? Um, and yeah, it sounds like you really did work quite a bit, even though it wasn't precise on The Sims. It was just like a different way of doing things, and definitely would say there's no real cheating the whole process of like investing the effort from my experience in poker. Um, you have to put in the effort somehow, and it has to be the good effort. Like, whether it's The Sims, whether it's feedback from other players or anything like that. It just seems like you took a route that you just for whatever reason you were stubborn against using the technology.
Well,
Is
the
that right?
technology didn't actually exist when I first came up.
Oh,
For the
okay.
first like 4 years, Sims weren't a thing. GTO wasn't a thing. Like people spoke about it, but nobody knew how to implement it even slightly. And so yeah, I worked harder than anybody else in my Skype groups. I worked harder than anybody else that I knew, but I didn't see it as working. I just loved it. You know, I'd sit down and play for 15 hours, and at the end, I'd be like, "Well, I'm stopping because I'm tired, but I don't want to stop because I just like." And then I'd be thinking about it as I go to bed. Then I wake up in the morning, take a shower, and be thinking about different lines that I could take. And that when I'm in tune with a certain game, that is something that is just it's nonstop. It just proliferates through my very being. If I'm playing chess loads, I'll think of different opening lines that I or different tactics, and it will just be playing in my subconscious without. And I think this isn't special to me. This is what happens when people are truly dedicated towards something. There's something about it. You tap into the frequency of the game, and your brain just starts figuring it out, even when you're not playing it.
I've noticed a bit of that going on. I do want to say a couple of things here. You mentioned, let's talk about this idea of being that invested in the game, and also the idea of it being like very hard to win or whatever or that sort of thing. Um, so I think that it's really important when you are playing a game to be actually that invested in it and want to do it just for the sake of doing it or doing anything. You don't want to do it precisely for the end goal. For example, in poker would be money. I mean, that's a nice anchor, but if all your only incentive is money, I mean,
Yeah, there's no
it
chance.
will be a
If
miserable
you're only in
existence,
for the
but you
money,
might get the money. Huh?
you can't. If you're only in it for the money, you can't sit there for 15 hours straight and have a good time, and you're just gonna play like shit. You have to love it. You have to really love it.
Well, yeah, but my point is, I mean, this stuff certainly applies to poker, but it also applies to many other things as well. I mean, that gives you a big clue as to what precisely you should be doing, even within the realm of poker, such as tournaments, Parliament Omaha, or whatever it is. I mean, basically, you want to be guided a little bit by what feels right to do, you can say. I mean, another way of saying this would be follow your passions, which
Follow
I've
your heart.
seen. follow your heart, which I've seen various spiritual sages say. I'm just trying to break it down analytically so that it makes sense to people because that's the kind of guy I am. Um, and the other thing I want to talk about is like people say that, oh, there's no dream, blah, blah, blah. You can't do it. This is a bit of a, what's the word, binary thinking, an example of binary thinking, in that it's more important to look at the spectrum of possibilities, especially, particularly within poker, because there's a lot of possibilities within poker that are pretty good or good, but not necessarily amazing. It's very hard to get the amazing one. Yes, that's true. But to aim for the amazing one is kind of setting yourself up for disappointment, or I mean, you'll be perpetually disappointed. Similarly, as if you're playing in a tournament and you're like expecting to win, you're gonna be disappointed like 99% of the time, right? Um, but if you have the attitude of, okay, like, this seems like a thing that's gonna be positive for myself, and I'm gonna approach this in a positive way, this will be better for you. Um, so I think it's important to look at things like that. In addition, it is important to look at realistic outcomes in terms of self-sustaining, in
Sustenance.
terms of like monetary possibilities. For example, the reason I say this is because in other avenues, such as pursuing tennis, professional tennis, or pursuing professional basketball, it's really not realistic at all to make any kind of money. But because you need to be like the best, essentially, the top 100 are the only ones in tennis, for example. I know that make any money because I know a couple of professional tennis players, and I mean, basketball is probably similar. So that situation does not exist in poker. It's far like smoother of a curve
It's really
than
easy to make six figures in poker, like in comparison to
I'm gonna
almost anything else.
I, I, I don't know about that, bro. I don't know, but it's easier in comparison to. It's probably relatively a bit easier in comparison to many current avenues for young
I can't
people,
think
and
of
that's
any easier format where you can make six figures. It's really hard to make
well,
7 and 8 figures, especially eight in poker. But I think six. I mean, if you go and spend some time with some of the people that are playing full time 10-20 no limit hold'em in America, uh, with all kindness and respect to them, they're fucking bad at the game in comparison to how you'd expect somebody making 200K a year to be. Whereas
um
if you find somebody that's making 200K of being a lawyer, like they've had to study for ages for like half a decade, and then they go and take
oh
another
yeah, yeah.
study course, and then they have to grind their way up to the top. And eventually, by the time they get to the top, they're very good at being a lawyer. Whereas in poker, we just have degenerates that are like spending half their time on the blackjack tables. Shout out to that. If they want to do that, I wouldn't recommend it. But they're still making six figures, and so yeah, it's definitely it's a tough game, but in comparison to the rest of the world, to make that much money, I don't think it's that tough.
Yeah. I that if we're comparing it to being a lawyer, yeah. And so what are more realistic enterprises to do to actually make money in are more like business and um maybe even crypto still.
It's
Crypto,
hard though.
well,
You
crypto's a
need
bit
you need
weird.
capital or a good network for those two things. Poker, you can. It's like this exponential thing that is like the exponential possibilities are really there.
Apparently trading's possible too. I mean, I'm not really an expert in these. I'll look into these after I build what we're both working on actually, which is building a poker community for all kinds of reasons. We'll get into that in a second. Um, But yeah, I mean, poker is definitely a viable outcome. I checked some sources and I wasn't really trying that hard because I wanted to see with my own eyes, like, is there really opportunity out there for low stakes players, for mid stakes players to make like decent money? I wasn't looking for people to like make millions of dollars, but it looks like actually there's opportunities for all of the above to be promising. And I like don't say that lightly. I found like a bunch and I was not trying that hard. Like I'm
Yeah.
doing other things too. I explored a couple opportunities myself. Speaking of which, I'm about to explore another one, but I'm not supposed to talk about it. But whatever. I mean, whatever means I won't talk. Like I'm still not talking about it.
You want to
I'm
hint at
just
it or
saying
something?
that
You brought it
it's
up
another
now.
high stakes opportunity to make
Okay,
good
cool.
money, like
Cool.
good money. And I mean, poker's not that complicated in ways. I don't view it to be that complicated. So yeah, I mean, there's lots of different possibilities. It's not easy. You need to have the right kind of thing. And one of the cool things about poker that I think is good is that it does cultivate a lot of positive habits, especially the ability to critically think, which I think is severely lacking in today's world, especially with the, the rise of social media and all these like stupid, very superficial ways of getting your attention, and like using cheap hooks to grab attention, like posting pictures of nude girls, for example, and things along these lines.
How's that going for you, by the way? You
What are your
still
thoughts?
you kind of tailed off from posting pictures of half naked women on social media.
We're over that. That was an experiment,
Cool.
you can say.
I love that you did it. I
It
think
was
it was really cool. I mean, not cool
well,
in the
I'm
sense
beyond
of
it.
like normative cool, but I think it's cool that you explored that side of yourself and you're like, that ain't for me, but at least I tried it, you know?
One thing I could tell you is that when I was on those trips with those girls, these were one of these weird situations where, I had sexual abundance. I had, it was as if like I got to the point where I was like trying not to be sexual. I was like, being very like I have a point where it's too much, and I think it's a little bit lower, easier to get to than with other people. And I was just being like really, really picky. And I mean, I'm a bit like that anyway, actually. And after a few days or so, I just really wanted to get off like the yacht or whatever it was. I was like, this is
You're
driving
just
me crazy. I
not
can't.
built for that life, huh? Not built for the Dan Bilzerian life.
No, no. I
Yeah,
mean,
me neither.
some versions of that are cool, but yeah, I really wanted to do something productive. And other guys had similar sentiments who I thought were built. On top of that, at least from what I know, like a few of them actually, all of them maybe even have like effectively wifed someone up, which is the interesting thing. I mean, it took them a bit of a minute. They still run these things. It's like their idea of fun is running these like little lifestyle projects, at least a few of them. But I just found that to be really interesting. I don't really understand why that is. I mean, exploring those possibilities to see what happens is interesting also to help solve the problems in the dating um, market in general, I think. Uh,
You got to go through a
not
whole phase
necessarily
to understand it. I
ex-
mean, you don't actually have to, but it can be kind of helpful.
exploring it experientially could be an interesting.
I
No, I'm
went, I
kidding.
went, I went through a polyamorous
I
phase,
already did that.
man. I went through a dating loads and loads of people phase, and I was never having like hookups or anything like one night stands or anything like that. But it was still, I got to go near the extremities of that version of life, and I took from it what I liked, and I left most of it behind. And no, I think it's powerful for a person to be able to experience a lot of the wild things in life, and you did it.
Sure. Well,
Um,
I can see a lot of reason to experience those things because they give not experiencing those things more depth. And in fact, the idea of karma, if you have the inclination to do something like that, it's actually better if it's healthily released than to have it be stifled, which is what many religions end up doing, is they stifle people's like sexuality
That's the
and other
thing.
things.
When you tell people no, it's a sin to be sexual, it's a sin to masturbate, or it's a sin to like go out in public wearing with your ankle showing if you're in a very conservative Islamic state as a woman, then what happens is you're not allowing people to figure that stuff out for themselves. You're not allowing people to actually fully embody that knowledge themselves, and they're just being taught. And so often you just find people exploding and exploding and exploding and exploding. And
Well,
yeah, you gotta spread your wings to be able to find out where you want to live.
yeah. Well, many like, the various things are technically a sin, but it's like, um, yeah, as you said, people effectively have to figure those things out for themselves. They have to figure out what's good or what's bad. I came to the same conclusion. You just kind of have to, can't really, there's no forcing it. I do want to ask you, you said you're not sleeping with the people when you were polyamorous? What? Or you're just not having one night stands?
No, I was sleeping with people. I just wasn't having one night stands. So I had, without even really realizing it, I had a lot of sexual trauma. So like sex was something that was very vulnerable for me. And so even when I wasn't aware of the trauma, I was still very selective with whom I slept with. And so I would have lots of girlfriends, but it would be long-term girlfriends. And then I would go through phases of breaking up with everybody and being single for a bit and not dating at all, and then I'd find somebody, I'd be in a long-term relationship with them. I was pretty chaotic.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. What was it? What was the sexual trauma that you're do you want to talk about that,
Yeah, I
or
can
what
talk
was
about
it that
it.
got you over this?
No,
Huh?
my granddad raped me as a kid, and
Yeah. That's pretty
so
harsh.
no,
Pretty nasty.
I mean, it wasn't
Not
fine at the
ideal.
time, but no, I'm all right about it now, so I can talk about it. And that left patterns. And often, what happens if someone's traumatized as a child, it can leave like patterns of that that action happening again and again. So I would naturally gravitate towards people that were kind of like sexually aggressive. And then I also had, and here's a funny thing that I've got some qualms with a lot of people online, including the feminist movement. So the thing is that I had a bunch of situations where I would be laying with a woman. I would say explicitly, no, I don't want to have sex. She would like hop on and just start having sex with me, and I'd be like too triggered from stuff from when I was a kid, even though if I didn't know about it at the time, because the memories came back to me when I was a little bit older. And to really do anything, I kind of just like went along with it after that, or just didn't move, or sometimes just prematurely ejaculated. And here's the thing: speak about this as a guy, and the vast majority of people are like, "Oh, poor you." Oh, poor man, getting so much because everyone just wants to because they're so based in their primal biological stupidities, and they can't imagine that it would be bad for a man to have sex with an attractive woman. And this is where I would have expected the feminist movement, who often claims to be the champion of both genders or sexes or all of them now,
Okay.
to
Cool
step
story.
in and say, actually, this is an issue too, but it's never brought up.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, their responses are pretty stupid. Obviously. I mean, this is what makes me, you know, I see, socially adjusted people say things like this, and I think, how fucking like this a thing to say? Why would you say that? If feminism is true to their, true to what they're
Mm.
supposed to represent, then they should have your back. But feminism has a multitude of modern feminism anyway. The old feminism was better, and some variations of feminism are
Yeah,
good.
it
It
depends. It
has all
depends on
kinds
the
of
person.
problems.
It's an individual thing, but and it's also like a cultural and temporal thing. Like, I actually got into feminism, and I described myself as a feminist when I was like 21, 22. So it's like eight
Yeah.
years ago, and this is before it got mainstream popular. So like all of the hardcore talking points that came around like 4 or 5 years ago, I'd already learned it all. I'd already had debates with friends who were feminists and like really understood the nitty-gritty nuances of why they were saying these things. So and all the love to these people, when someone like Justin Bonomo goes online and says, actually, you are culturally appropriating this thing and this actually gender theory, and it's like shit that I'd heard many years ago. Um, and it was very fascinating as I saw myself kind of like learn it, identify with it a little bit, because it was the first idea I'd had in life of how to be compassionate and good. I'd learned from a good friend of mine who was really really intelligent, and then reject it, and then watch that information spill from the universities out into the public world, and watch other people go through the same pattern that I went through. But some people just get stuck in it. It was really really interesting insight and parallel between my own life and theirs, of how ideology can just strike a person down.
Yeah. I mean, there's different sides of it for sure, and like the way it realizes itself can really changed in all kinds of ways. I will say that Justin's interpretation of feminism seems to be a bit healthier. At least whoever he's talking to, it seems like those feminists should have a gripe. I believe that's the word, with the mainstream feminists, which are not at all about equality. I mean, it's just it's just crazy to even think that they are.
I want to say I really like Justin, and he and I will disagree on probably most of the topics that are under that umbrella, but I really like him, and he's a
Yeah.
very intelligent guy. So yeah, shout out to him.
Oh yeah, I like Justin too. I'm not even disagreeing with him. I disagree with him a little bit, but just the idea of, yeah, I mean, his idea of feminism, I'm saying, is better than the actual mainstream one. Um, Tempting to go into that more, but we
Do it, do it.
should.
Give me your most controversial anti-LGBTQ opinion.
Actually, I'm not very. I don't have a strong opinion on that. I don't. I definitely don't want to get the rage too.
I'll find it.
Um,
I'll find it in you.
I would only do
Should
so
trans women
tactfully.
compete in women's sports?
I don't think so. But
There it is. There's the
well,
cancellation. He said the R word, and now he's gone down the terrible pathway of saying that.
I maybe this one. Well, the only reason I say this is because I have the South Park cartoon in my mind where Macho
Yeah.
Man decides he's a woman and he's juiced up on steroids and obviously wins.
And they just
That's the
called it
only
that.
reason. I mean, that just clearly isn't
It
good.
kind of happened as well.
But other than that, I mean, if it's equal, if it's if the hormone biology is relatively in the ballpark, I mean, I
Nah,
presume it's fair. I don't really want to talk about it that much, to be
the
honest.
hormone argument is so dumb, and it's that modern science just doesn't understand that you can't just like categorize a human being, a man and a woman, as only different due to their hormonal balances. There's like 20 different variables that you can't change at the moment through modern science, like bone density, muscle twitch fibers, stuff like this. And people intuitively get that. They're like, no, that person still has an edge. I can literally see them have an edge over the people, like physical edge in a physical sport. But they don't understand biology enough to be able to articulate why that is.
I feel like this is an example of. I want to give you a poker analogy. So I feel like this is an example of. Let's go back to poker a little bit. Of there's all these spots, and and instead of looking at, oh, let's try to see if the pre-flop strategy is working, or the c-bet strategy, or the the barrels are pretty good, barrel frequencies, like that kind of stuff's pretty good. We're like going off on a tangent, or making sure the um penny is say the three bet the river frequency is the right amount. If you see what I'm saying, I just feel like, at least for me, I don't care that much about that spot. I'll let you fight this one out, and I don't have a strong opinion. I don't really know
Let's
enough to
see.
analyze this complicated spot that you just never get to. It just doesn't really matter, man. At least for me, like it matters it matters a lot to other people, but I'm just not trans, like so. If I'm really educated, maybe I'll say something anyway. So let's talk more about poker
Wait,
and not get canceled.
let me balance it out a little bit. On the other side of things, people are so anti-trans, and largely because of their like genuine disgust towards people who are different, but then also
Uh,
largely because of how the trans movement has been radicalized. But people are so cruel to people that are trans. And people
well,
that are trans get bullied online like there's no tomorrow. They get called all of these terrible things, and they're just people, and they deserve love and compassion and kindness. Doesn't mean you have to agree with
I
them, but you got to treat them like
100% agree
fucking
with
people.
that. I do not understand the hatred towards trans people. This is beyond insane. That's one of the spots where, like, why do these crazy things? It's just that'll be a tougher thing to fix. I don't understand the bullying the trans people. There's probably some not so great reasons behind that should be explored. Um,
All right, we can
let's
do poker
talk
now.
a
We can do
bit
poker. We've
more
anti-cancel jungle now.
anti-cancel, please. So let's talk a bit more about poker. Why don't you tell us why poker is a spiritual endeavor? Because this is an interesting um thing that or interesting opinion that most people may not be able to see. What do poker and spirituality have in common, Charlie Carrel?
Poker's a teacher, and here's the thing: anything can be a spiritual endeavor if you want it to be, but some things will catalyze the spiritual process more than others. Poker is something that incentivizes you to sit there with yourself and with your emotions for 10, 12, 15 hours at a time. I'm sure you've done even longer sessions, as have I. And if you're not consciously aware of your own mind, the duality between the intellect and the intuition, the tilt that's happening, the stress that's happening. Why am I triggered by this person that's three bet me 3 times in a row? Oh, it links back to when I was kicked in the face as a kid 3 times in a row. There's just so many links that come with the inwards journey that you're incentivized to face because there's money dangling in front of you like a little carrot. And so that's part of it. And also what it does is it helps you find the play in the world. If you can genuinely find joy in playing a game and then extrapolate that energy out into the rest of the world, you'll see so many poker players, they gamify life. They're like, how I can throw this in the bin, I'll bet you amount of money, and they just get so much joy from it. And there is genuine spiritual nourishment there. In Hinduism, they call it the Leela, the divine play within the universe. There's so much spiritual nourishment in the idea of being able to play and play and play and laugh and not be too bothered by the result of things. And that's another really powerful thing. The not being results oriented is just so crucial to poker, and it's so crucial to life. And that there's just all of these little lessons that trickle down and eventually just embody them, because it's who you are. You're a poker player now. You've played millions of hands, and you've had to embody this way of being, which is structured, disciplined, powerful, intellectual, intuitive, mathematical, psychological, whatever it is, that the way that you approach the game. And when you embody that and bring it out to the rest of your life, that is a spiritual path. That is a spiritual process. And poker, people equate it to just playing blackjack, or just like, oh, they just say it's gambling. There's no way it can be good for the world. But we're watching in front of our eyes so many people get up to the high stakes, become a really powerful, reified version of themselves, and then want to go out and actually change the world in all of the different ways they want to change the world. And you see that time and time and time again. And for someone to say that that isn't like a good process, it's bananas.
All right, that was a really good answer. There's a few things to talk about. One thing I want to mention is there's a trigger that you reminded me of that absolutely does go back to my childhood, which is definitely in poker. I don't like to be with. If someone with me, they're gonna be on my mind. I'm gonna think in my head, if they three bet me a few times in a row, is this guy messing with me? Like that kind of thing. I mean, I'm very good at dealing with it poker wise now. I have a ton of experience, so the massive ego kicks in. So good luck, guys, with that one.
Yeah.
If you're trying to mess with the jungle, I guess I should encourage it. Actually, probably the edge. The results would say so. I think there's a word for that.
I f***ed around with you that one session where we got drunk and played against Tony G on Zoom. I like tried my hardest to get underneath your skin, and it was a really fun time. And
I think you got underneath my skin, but it doesn't affect my play that much. I will say that. Maybe in like a really subtle way, but nothing major. I can see how a lot of the life leaks do translate outside of poker. It's not so clear to me how to make them manifest in real life. The lessons from poker manifest in real life. That's what I've been trying to do for years. I've done it a little bit. One thing I'll say that really translates, at least for me, but it was more natural for me, was this idea of thinking of everything in terms of, you could say something like poker logic, but thinking of things in terms of like expectation and all of that, and thinking, okay, what are the possibilities? What if I'm wrong? I mean, one thing poker really shows you is that you can be really sure and totally be wrong all the time, even if you're, really experienced or whatever, which is an important lesson in real life.
And in the real world, they call that
10 times more in real life.
They call that Bayesian probabilistic thinking. And this is one of the other things that poker teaches you. It teaches you how to be a good Bayesian. And if you don't have a good intuition for and understanding of like what percentage chance it might be that somebody's going to be bluffing this turn or whatever it's going to be, then you're not going to do well in poker. And so we develop this deep intuition and understanding of percentages and probabilities, and how we can then predict how somebody's going to make their strategy, and then how to counteract that. And then when you bring that into real life, I've seen it just happen naturally. I've seen poker players just talk naturally in a Bayesian way without even knowing that the word Bayesian exists.
Yeah, I know about Bayesian probability, but I don't know too much of details. I mean, I believe there's some crossover to philosophy with that also. I mean, I took some philosophy classes. That seems to be my actual inclination. So that's interesting. Yeah, I would say that this is like a more realistic way of dealing with things in real life. And I wanted to ask this question. So you're noticing a lot of poker players do want to take that and do a lot of good in the world. I'm seeing this a decent amount, but I disagree a lot. We'll get to that a little bit. I disagree a lot with the methodology of how they're doing this in terms of what's truly optimal. I really do want to say what I believe is optimal, but let's just go into this first. And is that why do you think that is? That many poker players are going out and doing that once they achieve this level of success?
I think people when they've completed poker to a certain degree, it stops being as enjoyable. Like for me, winning a big tournament now isn't. I mean, I love it. I love the feeling. I love the feeling of having a big cash game session. But it's not like, oh, this is deeply, profoundly meaningful to my life. Or it can be, but it's nowhere near as much as if I were to then go out and do something in the real world. And I think a lot of people, they spend a lot of time in poker aiming to get to the top. And when they're there, like, oh, okay, now what? And there's also this big crossover with like inner work that comes with poker players. You get a lot of poker players that are always talking about mental health and all, and it really obviously would connect with poker because your mental health needs to be on point to be competing at the highest level. At least a lot of people's do. Some people are a little sociopathic, and that's also fine. Actually, quite a decent amount at the highest level. And
Fine is a relative term, but okay.
yeah, I mean, it's fine for them. They handle it in poker at least. And when somebody's done that inner journey, then very often when they get a lot of money, you're faced with a really obvious conundrum when you make a lot of money. You make like, let's say, $1 million, and then you look into it for like 2 minutes into the philanthropic world, and you're like, wait, this $1 million could literally, even if I was pretty inefficient about spending it, could literally save the lives of 1,000 people. Like save that, like stop them from dying. And that's
I've
being
got a controversial
inefficient.
opinion about that, by the way.
Yeah, go for it.
I don't think that saving lives is inherently good.
Okay. We found the sociopath.
No. Hear me out on this, but
Okay.
we'll get to this in a little bit because I think I have very compelling logic behind this.
Let's say I
But
gotta hear it now.
this.
I'm too curious. I gotta hear it.
Well, it's pretty simple. So people can be good or bad, right? And if you're gonna have the idea of like choosing to save someone's life, they're gonna do whatever with that, right? They're gonna do some good, they're gonna do some bad. So in a vacuum, like, yeah, you're doing something that will create some kind of effect for people. Like you could even say like they're going to experience more misery or whatever, and it's not going to be good. What if they cause a lot of more misery? What if you save the life of a villain and they end up being really bad? Like then it's you've done something quite bad actually. Um, so what I would say, especially with limited resources, what you want to do is you want to save the lives of people that are going to do something good for it. Because not only would those people go out and do something good with their lives and essentially their asset that they have, their life is their asset, just as any currency or money. Now they're rewarded for their good behavior, right? And the bad people are also punished by default. We've withdrawn the energy from the bad people. We say, okay, you guys have stolen from the community. You've taken literally, they're thieves. Even Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita calls on this. They're literally thieves in the same sense that someone is a thief from the poker community. They steal. And and now you've given it to the good people. The good people go on and create more and more. The metaphor of a garden really works. So you have like people working in the garden, and they, are doing more. They're planting more flowers or whatever it is, or they're just making more and more. I think that is in fact the nature of the universe. So that's my logic. In fact, that death is a necessary thing by nature in order to create this at least I haven't researched this a bunch, but it intrigues me. To create this what's the word? This line of you have to do something with it. This finish line, like there's a time constraint. That's the word. Okay, so time constraint. So now this gives people reason to do things. This actually is just part of the nature of the universe. Does that make sense to you?
It all makes
It
sense.
seems like a necessary boundary.
It's a utilitarian argument. Nice to meet you,
It
Thanos.
is.
And there are many people that have spoken out against the utilitarian. So for instance, if you're doing the trolley problem, and you have to like pull a lever to kill one person but save the lives of five, you would be the kind of person to be like, what are your moral beliefs before you, because in your mind it
I
might
mean,
be more
ideally, but
important.
like, yes, like if you have that bizarre decision, yeah, you have to pull the trigger for sure. I mean, you don't want that decision. Like, Um,
If you have if you had the option to press a button and let's say the people who are the 1% of people in the world who are most likely to be criminals in their life, whether they're babies or adults, are just going to drop dead, no pain or anything like that. Would you press it?
this is a different argument. Now you're actually an important subtlety here, and that a very important analogy to this situation would be you're basically asking me in poker, hey, so if you had the choice of pressing this button and between all the bad players, and say you could just wipe out all the bad players and give their money straight away to the good players, would you press it? The answer is no, and that is not, the will of the universe. That's not how the universe works. Like, a way that I look at it is essentially the bad people have their own strategy of dealing with things from the grandest perspective. And yeah, it does eventually take from it does eventually hurt themselves, and it does, like, in certain instances, create variations of it, well, temporary injustices between them and other people, but it eventually screws themselves. But like, it's the nature of the universe to let it just play out. So
Right. So
no,
you
I would
just gave
not
a
press
really
that button.
powerful counter argument to your first idea. Your first idea saying that you don't think it's naturally a good thing to save people's lives. You just gave a
Well,
really
there's a
good counter
difference
argument.
here. There's a difference.
What's the difference?
There's a big difference here. I don't think that I've contradicted myself as well. You said, okay, we've got this free money, we've got this like asset that we can now go out and give to people. Why don't we just give it to people randomly? The
I mean,
reason
I didn't say
is,
randomly. I said,
oh,
but
well,
let's assume that I did.
okay, like, that's my reason. Don't give it randomly. You like give it to the
But
people that deserve it. that's
right, but
that's what I'm saying. Is you just
your argument was that you don't think it's naturally a good thing to save somebody's life. But if your argument is
it's
that it's better to save people's lives who are going to do good stuff in the world, then that's a different argument.
oh, let's put it that way. Yes. I think, what's I'm thinking about this now. My intuition says you should save the person's life if you have the option to do so, but then you have to beg questions like, okay, now you've got a bunch of money. Like, you've got a bunch of money. Why don't you and I've asked myself these questions. Why don't I just give all my money away and save people's lives? You know what I mean? Because I could save a shitload of lives right now if I just gave all my money away and saved lives. If it was inherently that good of a thing. Is that really something good? But then I could like invest money and like save more lives or whatever. I've asked myself all these questions. These are the sort of conclusions I had to come
And
to.
I think the point is that you're thinking about it in terms of how to help the most people, how to bring the most joy into the world, and how to reduce the most suffering. Whether
Yes.
that looks like giving all your money away now or investing it and saving it in the future, or like a mixture of both, that's up to you to strategize. But for me, it's really
I have an
important
answer for
that,
that. I have a very compelling answer for that.
oh yeah,
I mean, I think you understand the answer, but basically, firstly, I want to go back to the original question I asked you, which is, why are these people doing this? Why are they all of a sudden doing good things? I think everyone has their own kind of reasons, whatever that means. But I have the reason that I think makes the most logical sense, or at least for me, it does, which is, and Alex Hormozy kind of said this as well. He realized, like, at some point, Alex Hormozy is a very famous influencer. I like him a lot. He's really, really good at what he does. He says a lot of philosophical truths, etc., that apply to entrepreneurship, which we're both trying to do. And he says something like, at some point, you realize like the amount of money that you make doesn't really matter, and that you change your goal from the amount of money to the amount of positive impact you create. It shifts, and this is what happened to me. I realized, well, wait, actually making all this money is in fact more arbitrary than aiming for something like positive impact, because the positive impact will last. But the money is just like a fucking number on a screen, no different from like a game beyond whatever freedom I wanted. And I didn't really want that much beyond, I didn't want it that much monetarily speaking beyond like whatever freedom that I had. So it became, yeah, I guess it made more sense for me to come to this conclusion a little bit faster. So it was as if instead of making money on a screen, now I'm making more positive change in the world, and that has some kind of like positive value, and it was also more interesting. Whereas like the number on the screen on the your number on the screen goes up. Yeah, you watch it go up, and you can see that it goes up, but it goes up in a very predictable way. I mean, there's even like a linear possibility to it, so it becomes kind of boring in a way. It's like a solved game. Like at poker at some point, in certain ways, became for me something like a hedonic treadmill, but a much more complicated one. And I was like, I don't care that much. But it did evolve. I did see other aspects to it. And that's why I ended up dressing him in costumes, acting crazy. And also how I ended up realizing a bigger goal, which is to create something that has parabolic, potentially parabolic returns. And so basically, another way that poker players may understand this is like, when you push an edge, you do the right thing, and you don't know that it's gonna like do something good, but eventually does something good for you in the long run. I mean, this is the game of doing the right thing but on a grander scale, which is doing things that create positive impact, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, at least in theory, this is the real game, the bigger game, you can say, if you want to keep playing bigger games. So that's the answer that I have for that. That's what I personally realized and was able to put into words.
And yeah, it all comes back to what we said at the beginning about the most selfish thing you can do is to be selfless. And I truly believe that if we point every atom of our being towards doing as much good in the world as possible, or creating as much positive impact, whatever you want to say, reducing as much negative impact, I truly, truly feel to the heart of my being that that is the optimal way to live life for myself. Not talking from like a martyr place or like oh, look at me being so fucking morally good. It's literally just like, hey, I think that it's better for me and for everybody else. And that's the game that I want to play. I want to make everybody happy. I want to make everyone suffer less. And in Eastern philosophy, there's a mantra that would go along with this, which is "Loka samasta sukhi no bhavantu." And there's so much depth in every single word and the whole mantra itself. But it's essentially like me, like saying, "Hey, all of my thoughts, all of my words, all of my actions are going to point towards doing as much good in the world as possible for all beings." And when you dedicate yourself, and this is why people chant it so much, when you dedicate yourself with true attention and focus to that point, that North Star compass, where it's like, boom, everything I do points towards that. It's not just, hey, I'm making enough money, I make as much money as I can to do as much good. It's like every time I like say hi to the bin man, every time I have the option about, helping somebody that's on the street, every time I'm, considering doing something for my wife, that is imprinted within our cellular structure. Those words, those vibrations are imprinted within it, and you get to really actually fully immerse yourself in that game. And life is just a series of games, which I know you agree with me on that because we've talked about it before, where that is the game, that is the ultimate game, and now you're fully immersed in it because you've really hit hard with that. You don't have to say it in Sanskrit, but I do believe there are some esoteric properties to doing that. But just truly saying, I am going to dedicate myself in every way possible to doing as much good in the world as I can.
Well,
And
that's what I've been realizing. It's very hard to emotionally reconfigure yourself towards that, even if you like can see the intellectual possibility. One thing I want to say is actually relatively recently, I was reading something that does essentially say that, but from different perspectives. Well, similar, just a slightly different perspective. I was reading Swami Vivekananda, who, for a very long time, he's like the an intellectual Hindu guy. He's very, very smart. He debated the existence of God for a long, long time, and he had an atheist. One atheist parent and one that really believed, and he was really conflicted for a super long time. And he said to do a couple things like that, basically to he even gave some advice for the atheist to believe properly. He said a lot of smart things actually, but one thing he said was to basically pray that everything you do will be for the sake of the universe, is one way of putting it, or give everything in your life towards God. And he also said basically to pray every day for something like peace, happiness, and bliss for all beings, which I will say I did try that, and I definitely felt something. I felt like, okay, this definitely did something in my mind. It made me like a bit more positive, I guess I could say, a bit more joyous. Whereas maybe I'm a bit too, I think sometimes I can be a little bit too analytical or whatever. But yeah, I found that to be interesting that I had that effect. So I could see how these things might work. in terms of actually changing oneself. It makes some sense to me.
Yeah, bro. I used to
I
be a fucking hardcore atheist rationalist. No, you know, I was like really, really hard into that. I didn't believe I was a nihilist. I didn't believe in right or wrong, and I was truly dedicated towards hedonistic pleasure. But not even that. I didn't even see a rational reason to have hedonistic pleasure. And yeah, I watched myself change from like the most emotionless person that I just so traumatized. All my emotions just I couldn't feel them for the life of me. I couldn't feel any emotions. To being somebody now, I cry every day from joy and seeing my daughter and all of these things. And it's like, yeah, there's so many
That's
things
cute.
that is really beautiful, man. It's just watching her drum at the moment. She's 7 months. She just loves starting to drum. Um, I've seen so many of the things that I would have just put away as like non-scientific, or you know, I was so heavily in the intellect that I just didn't believe in doing any of these things, or I didn't think it was for me, like meditation. I just didn't think it could possibly be good for me. And now I've slowly started to see that every single one of these things, like dancing, singing, meditating, chanting, like all of the telling stories, being around a campfire with friends, like all of these things that truly take you out of your mind and into your body and help just nourish your body, it then spills out into the intellectual world as well. And I become a better poker player. I become a better chess player because I just feel better. And I can be intellectually on point as for a lot longer without drugs or anything like that. And I think we're living in a time where we're so heavily disconnected from our hearts and from the earth and from feeling, from being human. We're so heavily into the intellect and disconnection with concrete and living in flats. And people just have forgotten that they're a human being and that you need to do human being stuff that we evolved to do to be a high functioning person. And the depths that you can take that, I mean, you have to really go to like somewhere like India to see how far you can take that, or you have to find people that have been deep on their spiritual path to really show us how far you can go.
It's not so easy.
That's not-
I will say that many of those changes are not very easy, and certainly there's going to be a number of people sitting here thinking, "What the hell?" or blah blah blah, nonsense. I will say it's very hard for many people to understand that there may be better ways out there, especially when I want to talk about the comparison between hedonism versus ulteriors, ulterior ways of doing things. And I struggle with this a little bit myself, but basically, I think the principle is that hedonism is sort of like a short-term gratification game, and that yeah, like you'll get the pleasures from hedonism or whatever, but you cut off the potential pleasures from um, more long-term gratifying things, such as potentially like a long-term relationship or all the benefits that come from having good health if you get a lot of junk food. Um, and So I think that's just what it is in a nutshell. It's just like, do you choose the short-term gratification versus the many long-term potential benefits, which are much more variegated and different? You have to like shut those off if you do choose hedonism just by its nature of what that is. I would say that that would be the, some for the intellectual crowd that might make sense to people. Um, and I mean, this is one of the reasons why I'm deciding I'm going to try the celibacy thing. While I realized that my sexual desire was really getting in the way of a lot of my purpose stuff. I mean, actually, sexual desire is the obstacle towards spiritual realization. In the Hindu philosophy,
some of them,
which,
some of them
huh?
are all right with it. You go towards like the tantric paths, and people are embracing their sexual desires. It's more like yeah, it's like the difference between eating a cheeseburger or having like a beautiful healthy meal. You know, it's like, so, you know, I've never found a spiritual path that incentivizes the sexual cheeseburgers. But there are some that really embrace the healthy sexual activities.
Oh, I certainly think that that has some kind of place. It would be under the branch of Hinduism again. Buddhism just would not give a shit, I would think, because Buddhism is just saying, okay, screw all these games. Let's just go straight to the source and just feel bliss. That's what Buddhism basically says, or at least the original Buddhism, as far as I'm aware. I'm not super educated on it. Um,
Yeah,
what was I gonna
it's
say?
more like a deep and profound awareness, and the idea is that eventually you escape the cycle of samsara and suffering.
Yeah.
I wanna touch on some of the controversial things, and not for the sake of being controversial, but for the
Well,
sake
to
of
me, well, the one of the controversial things of sorts that I really want to touch on is just this idea. I personally came to the conclusion that some of the most good you could actually do was basically creating cultures of goodness. This is really relevant. Creating cultures of goodness, of somehow putting out more, creating more good, having that attitude yourself, first of all, of it being, having, doing things more in a better way, create more positivity, you can say more joy, whatever it is. And also influencing other people to do so as well, which is a bit tricky. And there's many different ways of doing this, actually. And people do this. People have been doing this for a long time. This is what I realized. And maybe I'm sure you realize it too, but this is what a lot of art is about. This is what a lot of music is about. This is what a lot of games are about. This is what like a lot of cinema is about. This is what a lot of, a lot of communities cultivate this as well, which I understand you've got a community. Um, you want to talk about that?
yeah, and it's still growing. It's still I'm still figuring out what kind of community I want to build in the world. And at the moment, it's like it's a beginning. It's a microcosm, and of what it eventually might be. But I'm just trying to feel out what it is that can help people become best versions of themselves and become happiest versions of themselves. And it's a delicate balance. But if we can create that within ourselves first, if we can find that delicate balance of virtue and getting rid of vices that get in the way of our success, and joy and genuine, like I'll never learn from a person that's a spiritual master if they don't like emanate bliss and joy and love and all of these things, because there's like, well, what the have you been doing with all your time? What's the point if you're just still miserable like everybody else? And so I'm nowhere near an enlightened master or anything like that, but I've managed to reach a certain level of competence in my life where, I used to be an Asperger kid that could barely tie shoelaces, definitely couldn't make a cup of tea. I couldn't speak to anybody about anything without it devolving into nonsense and just being terrified of all social interactions. I had all of the ADHD symptoms before it was just like hyperdiagnosed, especially when I was a little bit older. Had dyspraxia. I really was dealt a pretty shitty hand. And I managed to cultivate myself into now I'm the most confident person in most rooms that I walk into, probably the vast majority of them. I feel comfortable in my own skin. I'm joyful and I'm articulate. I'm successful, and I've still got so long to go. But now I feel comfortable to finally step up and be like, I can actually help guide people, because I do have a love for teaching, a love for leading communities and things like that. And I want to be able to share what's worked for me, but at the same time, still just learn, because all of these people out there are individuals. And I think it's very hard for a leader sometimes to remember that the individuals in the community that you're leading have so much to teach you as well. So I'm always like constantly trying to remind myself of that. And what I've created in my discords, in my community, is a bunch of people who are, yeah, they want to get good at poker, and loads of people are having huge amounts of success, making a shit ton of money. But the deeper part of that is that we're all actually part of a community, and we're all trying to become the best versions of ourselves. And I'm really banking on the idea that a lot of the people that make a ton of money from this community are also going to go out and do a ton of good in the world once they have that position of privilege, or whatever you want to call it. And so, yeah, it's like at the moment it's a little seed and it's still blossoming, but eventually I do plan to have communities worldwide that I can then be part of and help and learn from as well.
That's all great to me. That's what I hope with the goal of the community that I'm creating as well. I'm still figuring out precisely how to do it. That maybe it is a very complicated thing to do, but I really do think communities in this like idea of positivity will is really the change that's required, and that will help get more and more people to do more positive things and create parabolic change. Ideally, um, it's hard to get people on board with that, and you can only do so much. Actually, it's really up to the other people. Thinking about what you said, there are some benefits to being, you can say, aspergic or whatever the word is. I have like some of the weaknesses myself. There's some. what's the word? There's some things that people think about people with Asperger's that are not really true. There's some misconceptions, I believe the word is. One thing I was thinking was that I do think precisely dancing would be really good for me. I wanted to get a dance teacher. I do think the idea of like cultivating more joy is a good thing. That's one thing I want
What
to
stops
do,
you
but
from just after this podcast just turning on, nobody's around, just and putting on some music and just jamming for like 20 minutes and just dancing through the discomfort,
I
dancing
have
through
better
it all.
things to do. I gotta go to the gym or something,
A
dude.
little bit too busy, yeah, a little bit too busy for the dance. Well, what about later when you're less busy?
We'll get to that. It's I just don't. I don't know.
Yeah, that's where I was at as well. Like
But
the thought of me dancing, even when I was by myself, was so terrifying that my body would freeze up. And I eventually had to start dancing by myself. And then I started doing it in front of, I had the tank of fish. I started dancing in front of my fish and it's like really awkward and really, and then I brought up some more confidence. So I do it in like a club or at a festival where no one's really looking. And then eventually now it gets to the point, if you put me butt naked in front of the King of England's, I'd be like, let's go, you freak,
it's a hard
whatever.
place to get
Uh,
to.
and yeah, I like dancing on the tube and things like that. And it's just a matter of practice, and it's a matter of like, oh, okay, I've made the decision. I want to be this version of myself. What's the path? And it's very often just try it.
My answer to that is a bit strategic. I have to strategize my own personal development, basically. And you only have so much limited willpower. Like doing this, I don't know what precise dividends it pays. So I focus more on other things where I've already overextended myself all the time. Like I don't even know if I get enough sleep, dude. So throwing dancing in there, dancing can wait. Dancing can wait, okay? You can do
Yeah,
all the
that
dancing for
5 minutes a
us,
day, you could just jam. That's too much.
I don't agree. I think complexifying my life is not the answer. If anything, I'm too complex. I
If
get
you
that,
see
Steve.
dancing as complexifying, I think you're looking in the wrong direction there.
See, you need a more compelling argument to convince me,
Well,
basically.
dancing isn't it's a way of being. Like we evolved in societies and cultures that danced, and our bodies are evolved to enjoy the process of dancing. And so by learning or
So,
remembering how to do the things that we've evolved to do, we're not complexifying our life, we're simplifying it. We're getting rid of these random ass mind games that we've created that say, oh, we can't dance in these situations, we can't sing in these situations. We're bringing back the simplicity of just being. And when you find the nature of people's beingness, they dance, they sing, they tell stories, they joke, they laugh.
see, I have a million. I have like a million like holes to put into that argument. Like, why is what I would basically say.
Why what?
You would have to basically create a more compelling argument rooted in logic. Like, yeah, maybe
Wait,
if I dance
that was
enough, I'll
directly
enjoy
rooted in
it.
logic.
But
That,
who
in fact,
cares?
I'm going to tap myself on the shoulder and say that was an extremely logical argument. I took it from the
I don't
evolutionary
agree.
standpoint, and I
I
said,
don't agree.
if how is that not rooted in logic? We've literally evolved over millions of years to
So
dance.
what? I don't care. Like, what are you
But
talking about? Like, why is this
that's
good for
not a
me?
logical argument. We've evolved to dance,
No, that's
and
my
what happens when
experience.
we're in line with our evolution, when we eat what we've evolved to eat, when we do what we've evolved to do, is that we
I
resonate. And it's like you're
I don't
feeding your
agree for
body
many
the right
reasons.
nutrition. It doesn't have to be food. It could be just like actions or ways of being or ways of thinking. And if we've evolved to that, we can't escape our human nature. And if we've evolved to dance and sing, then we dance and sing. And look, it brings people joy. And so that's the way. That's the most simple way of being.
Your method's not very good in this case. Not for convincing me, but you might convince other people.
I want.
So
No,
here's
no, no. You can't just disagree. What's your reasoning? What's your rational
I
reasoning?
have all kinds of reasonings. I'd be like, well, okay, you could say that it evolved in the past for a lot of different people. It didn't evolve for me. I don't give a shit. I would say
That's a
like now we're in the
terrible
21st
argument.
central. Like, it doesn't appeal to me. Like, what can I say? It doesn't appeal on the like superficial way. Like, I don't feel like I have to dance by myself. Do you know what I mean? That's a very that you can't even argue with that. That's just my
That's an emotional argument. That's not a rational argument.
like. Why should some evolution in the past like we evolved to do lots of different things that weren't necessarily good,
Like what?
and people don't do lots of different things that aren't necessarily good. We evolved to we evolved to like run in the savannas or whatever it was, and we're
Yeah,
not doing that
running
anymore.
makes
We're
people
stuck in
feel
fucking
real good,
buildings right
man.
now.
Running makes them feel pretty good. It's pretty good for you.
I don't really like running that much actually. Um, but yeah, I would say all that, and I would say my whole reasoning of doing dancing would be okay. I can see that it helped me conjure up feelings of joy by like I can see how like that process, I could feel the difference in my mind of like, okay, now I'm putting on a vibe, okay, I learn how to dance. And maybe I want to have the moves like Jagger, okay, or moves like Enrique, whatever his name is, or maybe that moves like Ricky Gonzalez or whoever these like R&B artists are. Okay, that'd be pretty cool. So there's that too, and I have some like Latin swag. Maybe I have a little Latin in me. On top of that, I do think I'm a little bit I don't flow enough, okay? And I can see that there's potential joy in it, but it would be a work in progress. It's not gonna come anytime soon, buddy. And it doesn't give me any joy to do it so much. I would rather focus on my business, make some money, and that would actually bring quite a bit of good too. We'll work on the dancing, and I can think of all kinds of like ways to counter you basically.
I haven't heard a
Um,
single good counter argument apart from the one that the best one is I don't want to, which is completely reasonable. But
I
it's not
mean,
like a rational argument of why it wouldn't be beneficial.
to give you an analogy in the poker world, it's like you're like saying something like oh, this worked, back in the day. This was, and then not neglecting the fact that now it's 2023
Nah,
and
terrible
the game has
analogy, dude.
evolved.
Evolution hasn't just like changed once solvers come in.
I don't buy these
Happened
evolutionary.
over millions of years.
People say all kinds of things about complicated systems because of evolution 300,000 years ago. No, like what the
So
does that mean? That can mean all kinds of
is
things.
your argument that humans are no longer evolved to enjoy dancing?
I didn't say that.
So
I said that it's
what's your
not so
argument? If,
clear. That's
what's changed in the last like 100 years or however many years you think it's changed?
a lot of things, dude. Like the agriculture and the industrial revolution, a lot of things, really a lot of
And you think
things.
that
And
that's made such a genetic impact on the human being that we're now no
I don't have a
longer.
strong opinion, but what you're trying to do is try to change my already complicated schedule to say, okay, why don't you dance a little bit? And I'm telling you, like, dude, you need a stronger argument than this. Like, tell me concretely, why is this good for me? Just because we did it 300,000 years ago doesn't mean that it's going to be good for me right now in the 21st century, as I've got like a business to create and I'm running a podcast and I got to play some poker and make some money and I'm chasing some girls and blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? It's like, dude, like we need like really compelling reasons. Like, what is it going to do for me if I like learn how to dance like anytime in the future? Now, maybe I do want to dance with some spicy senoritas or whatever. So there's an incentive. Okay, I'd be like, okay, yeah, I want to learn some moves on the dance floor for that. But like to dance on my own, now I have to like push myself in this. I mean, on top of this, I'm like, I have all these other goals, stretch and all this shit, and like do some meditation.
That's
It's
good.
just like, where is this going to fit in? Do you know what I mean? I can see benefits from meditation. It's scientifically proven. Whereas dance, I don't know where those reports are.
There's definitely scientific evidence of dance being good for you, but that like I'm not here
Well,
to like
you
force
can
feed you.
present.
I'm not here to tell you what you got to do in your life. And I know you're a busy guy. What I would
I'm
say.
not unopposed. I'm saying, tell me something more compelling.
Well, you didn't give me any good counter
Maybe.
arguments to what I said, but even if the evolutionary argument
Yes, I did.
doesn't suit you, which it definitely should, like the
I don't like
evolution.
those arguments. I don't buy those arguments.
Okay,
Like that can mean no offense. It's just
no,
like, what
it's
does that
okay if you
mean?
don't understand it, but come on, let's be real. Evolutionary arguments are there for a reason. We are human beings. We're in a human body. You can make an evolutionary argument as all the nutritionists do of like eat the stuff that we evolved to eat. And there's a reason that we say eat the stuff that we evolved to eat because
What's the diet that they say
because
they
we
evolved
evolved
that you
for it,
evolved to
and that's
eat?
how evolution works. We work in synergy with actions or with nature or anything like that. And when we do things that we evolved to do, we
This is a
resonate.
counter argument for you. I know enough about nutrition to tell you that what's good for you nutrition wise. First of all, is very complicated. And second of all, it changes a lot for each person. Why can't I just say I'm not the kind of person that likes to dance? Like I'm a intellectual man. I got to write essays and make fucking podcasts and shit. You got to run businesses, dude. Like what are you
That's
talking
how I
about
used to be,
dancing?
man. And
You can handle the dance floor.
I'm telling you,
Um,
you're identifying with the part of yourself that makes you
actually
more
no.
comfortable to be. And I've
I
been
totally
there
agree.
and I'm still there because it's so easy to be like, I'm a poker player and I enjoy poker. I like making money. I like doing intellectual things because I get validation from the external world for all of these intellectual things. But actually, I feel awkward and uncomfortable within myself when I sing or when I dance or anything like that. But the point is that if that thing makes you uncomfortable, that's something to lean into, to become the fully
I don't
realized and
have time for
crystallized
it right
version of
now.
yourself. You want to be able to not be uncomfortable in these human scenarios. You want to be the kind of person that can be in flow in all of these scenarios. And if you look at all
Why?
of the most spiritually enlightened gurus and yogis that you look up to or you've listened to, all of them feel comfortable singing, dancing, doing poetry and doing art and things like that. It doesn't mean they spend all their time doing it, but they're not scared of it. They're not uncomfortable by it. And they have the ability to go into that way of being if they choose to be.
You missed my point. You missed my point. You totally missed a couple of points. I didn't say these things weren't good. What I said is I do not have time. Therefore, why should I change my schedule to do all these other things, which I think are important, to now include this right now instead of wait until, say, I got the business running properly, and then I'll throw in some dancing. And in fact, by the way, I was trying to get some dancing going. And I see evidence of it, but you're still not really making it that clear. And like, to be honest, one of the biggest evidences of it is that all these people do this, actually. Um, that's probably like the biggest evidence for me personally. I actually could create an argument that makes more sense for why this makes sense. I never really understood it, but you're not really getting at the core of it from my perspective. And whatever, it doesn't really matter that much. Most people are just gonna dance anyway, dude. So
Your
you can
logic's
convince
all
all
over the
those
place, but
people.
I love it, man. Your logic is bouncing off the walls at this
I think
point.
my logic's
No,
great.
your
I
your
don't
your
know.
argument's gone all over the place, and I don't mind it, but
My
it's
main
like
point is like, dude, why is this important enough for me to drop what I'm doing to push myself to dance every day?
it might not
Why
be,
don't I?
but
I've got enough fucking things to do.
for 5 minutes a day and that much time, and I bet you waste a lot more than 5 minutes a day doing something. But I'm not telling you to do that. But what I am
I
saying is
bet I
that
use my time
I've
really productive, actually.
I'm sure you are in comparison to the vast majority of people. But anyway, what I'm saying is there's an element of life that often people in today's society completely reject, and that element is the element of being human. And I used to do it to such an extreme, like to such an intense extreme. And I see it in other people. I see the patterns of behavior when they're super in their head, they're super thinking, they're not very emotionally connected to themselves, they're not crying, they're often, their brains are just like hyper rationalizing everything all the time. That used to be me. And and I see it in other people, and with all love, I see that in you. And that what I'm saying is that I'm not telling you what to do. You got your own schedule. I don't know your life, but there is such a profound element to life of when you connect into your body, you connect into that way of being, you connect into the emotions, you sit in silence for long periods of time and you feel deeply everything, and then you connect with the community through dancing, singing, or whatever it is that changes somebody so much that then that change is in every single one of the meetings that you have, of the businesses that you run, of all the decisions that you make. And changing that little bit inside can change so much on the outside. So it can actually be the most productive thing you can do, because when you change something on the outside, you just change one
Okay.
thing or a few things. Change something on the inside, you change it for the rest of your life. And
I
so
think to be honest, what you're kind of doing reminds me a lot of it reminds me a lot of everyone who wants to make a positive change in the world that does not really succeed, or at least I should say that feels as though the world should be simpler than it is. Um or wonders why people aren't more positive than they actually are. Because you know what? I actually think there's some validity to what you're saying, but there's a few different things that are going on from my perspective, which is one, as I've said before, what is the actual change that this matters? And the second thing is the execution, which matters more. Like, how the is this going to end up in my life? Like, I don't think I'm really, really struggling to find 5 minutes every day when I can't even find 15 minutes to meditate sometimes. I would rather focus on that one than, finding 5 minutes to dance, whereas I know this one's proven. So that's what's actually going on. And that's why things are more complicated, because there's just way more stuff under the belt. And what would be perhaps more productive is creating simple changes that you can flow. Actually, flow is a good word. into someone's schedule that can make sense in this kind of direction. I
Yeah,
mean,
like singing and
and like
dancing. I don't need to put aside time to do that. I just do it in my day.
that had nothing to do with what I just said.
But no, what I'm saying is that flows into a schedule. Or
That doesn't
schedule
flow
is,
into my schedule.
but it can. But and you know
It's
you can.
irrelevant. Doesn't. If you want to change me, or if you want to change other people, you have to like find ways of that. That's what like having empathy is like what works for you. Works for you. That's great, but maybe it could work for me. Maybe it could work for other people too. But there has to be ways to you know it just has to be made easy if it's like a major change, or it's just not going to happen. You
How
know what I mean?
how
There has to be some kind of inception.
how in touch are you with your own emotions? Like how often do you cry? How deep do you
Oh, I never
feel?
cry. I
Never
cry
cry.
out of I like very, very rarely cry out of pain. But I cry out of like something makes me really sad. If like if something really sad happens, that kind of thing. Um,
So
I don't know.
I used to never cry as well. I would go years without crying, like easy, and I'd never really be sad or anything like that. And now I'll cry most days, if not every day, and it's a beautiful experience. And it's just like what's happening is
It's an
that all
interesting shift.
it was gradual. It took a long time to get there, and there was like ups and downs
I
as
don't
well.
know. I
But
don't know if I want to get there or not.
yeah, you got to
Uh,
make the decision. And I remember I was like 22, right? And I was
it's lots of decisions to make.
I was faced with this, and I didn't believe any of the spiritual stuff, but I remember deeply and profoundly realizing that I had this decision of going on the normal path that I was on, where I was just like not really feeling anything. I was always kind of content, and people think I was happy, or I was kind of happy, or diving into my emotions as deeply and powerfully as possible, and that would come with everything that it comes with. And I took weeks over that decision, and eventually I decided I want to dig into my emotions as deeply as possible. And
That's a nice idea, but again, you need like the inception of like how would this even work, and it's like a complicated thing that you're talking about, and like
I figured it out
crying
myself.
more. I
And
don't know if it's really the word to aim for. More joy, sure. Okay, I'll take more joy.
well, the thing about crying is that you're just releasing energy. You know, people will often describe crying as cathartic, as like a really positive experience. And you know, sometimes it could be a terrible one because something terrible has happened to you, and you identify with that terribleness. But what's often happening is that you just have this build up, and you just release, and then you carry on with your day. Whereas what a lot of people do, and what I was doing for a very large part of my life, was not crying, or at least not crying much at all, and then I would have all of these buildups of emotions that I wouldn't even feel because I was so disconnected from, and that would start to really impact my health, my psychology, and all of these other things. And again, it comes back to, this is how we evolve. We evolve to be in touch with our emotions. We're evolved to cry when we need to cry. It's a natural
I just
process of
don't.
being
Well,
human.
what does that mean? Like, so you could even say like there's some things that we evolved to do that aren't very good. Even
Like what?
like I mean, we evolved to do. I mean, there's all kinds of bad habits in our evolution
Like
that
what?
should be changed. What do you mean, like what?
I
Like
mean, like what?
the fact that people procrastinate, the fact that people have these issues in the first place that we're just talking about, like the fact that people have all kinds of negative patterns. All those are, variations of evolution. Just because that they evolve doesn't mean that they're necessarily good, and certainly not necessarily that
Those things that
applicable.
you're talking about are like survival mechanisms. So if something deeply
Why
traumatic
is this not
happens.
one? Why is this not one? If you cry, like people come to your aid.
No,
Like,
no, no. So,
you know what I
so,
mean?
so these are all evolutionary processes that are better to have than not to have. That's what evolution decided, in at least when we were living in the caveman days. And so, what would
Um,
happen? Let's say, for instance, our tribe gets invaded by a neighboring tribe, and we have to fight, and we watch one of our good friends die in front of our eyes. Suddenly, we have a choice where we could feel our emotions and cry and break down, but then the tribe's still invading, so it's probably not the best choice. And what happens over time is the evolution's like, okay, the people who have this defense mechanism that disconnects their body from their mind, so they're no longer experiencing the emotions that are happening within their body, they're no longer embodying their emotions, they're the people that can fight off the tribe, they're the people that can. And these are the evolutionary processes. So it's not that these are bad
so maybe
evolutionary
maybe I'm one of those
processes.
people. Like, I don't mind I don't mind conflict. I don't mind drama. You know what I mean? It makes sense, right? I don't get too emotional in these kinds of things. I'm a play high stakes poker. Hey, you know
But
what I
that
mean?
doesn't escape from the fact that you are intrinsically an emotional being that has this trauma and this disconnect from your emotions, and then you would be in flow again if you removed these barriers and defense mechanisms, and you would be able to be again. You'd be able to be in flow again, because there are downsides that come with these defense mechanisms as well.
Okay, cool. Like that can mean lots of things. I don't exactly disagree. It's just not convincing. Like we're still going back to the same problems, basically. Um, like and if you want, I have to say the same thing again. If you want to create change, you have to make it easy. Um, you know, and like you have to make it like Inception esque, unless it's like very, very compelling. Unless it's like literally a bunch of people like barging down your door. Yeah, that creates change. But you know, things that are a bit more abstract need Inception and need more like, you know, why is this, and that, et cetera, et cetera. I don't disagree with you. Like, it makes sense to me, but I also like can see other possibilities and whatever. And I'm a busy guy, and I don't see why I need to cry. I'm happy. I'm happy not crying. I feel special not crying that much, to be honest, because I don't really cry out of pain. Like maybe if like I lost a limb, I might cry. Um,
I
but
don't really cry out of
it's
pain
very
much.
rare.
Um,
So why don't we talk about, well, what's your plan for making the most positive impact?
the way that I think there are a couple of ways you can approach doing as much good in the world as possible. You can do the kind of like Elon Musk approach, which is make a ton of money and try and change the world through the intellect. Now, some people will champion that approach, and I give it so much commendability. The fact that he's done various different programs that have really brought the world forward is incredible. However, the problem that he faces and is going to continue to face is that he hasn't done that deep spiritual work. And so a lot of the decisions that he's going to make, he's not going to be understanding his own emotions. He's not going to be understanding his own motivations. He's not going to be in flow and empathetic towards other people in ways that would be beneficial for him to be making these very, very grand decisions. Now you have on the other end of the scale, you have people like Buddha or people like Jesus that did so much spiritual work that people just flocked to them, that they were just like a light. Some of these historical people, and they ended up doing an insane amount of good in the world as well. Now, I think in today's world, there are some people that are going to be doing the one and some people that are going to be doing the second one. And personally, I feel like my role is to be doing both, but not be, I could go further down the spiritual path if I just did spiritual path, but I wouldn't be going down as far as the material. And I think my role in this lifetime is to do as much spiritual work as I can, become the best version of myself as I can, so I can do the best, so I can make the best decisions that I possibly can for myself, at least the best that I can do to my capacity. And then also get stupidly rich, give out as much money as I can in the most efficient ways that I possibly can, and try and make as much change in the world as I possibly can to bring people together and to bring joy to people's lives. And yeah, that's the way that I see the game.
Um, I pretty much agree with you, and I find it interesting that you compare the two. I have my own suspicions, but so I actually was originally for a long time on the idea of like whatever the hell Elon Musk doing is ideal. Um, but I changed along the lines. I changed at some point. I realized, oh no, it's not actually. I was incorrect. I was gonna write a blog about this. How about how if someone came to me and was like, dude, you want to like become a robot and be like the best poker player and have like infinite power? I'm like, yeah, I do. Make me a cyborg or whatever it is. And then somewhere along the lines, I realized, oh no, this is a bit misleading. Actually, it's actually a huge trap. In fact, I think there's no like end to that kind of game. It's that kind of game. Liv Bowery, if you've talked with her, you probably like her stuff. She talks about this Moloch trap of like basically you keep chasing, the little bit of like pleasure or whatever And you keep chasing this like measurable thing, and there's no end to that chase. Like you can think like, oh, the end's actually when you're like a robot. Now you have the superiority or blah blah blah. Like, no, it's not. Like then other problems come up, and so I realized that, and on top of it, that my own happiness had more to do with how I was looking at things, and as you said, the emotional innerness. And I realized, oh, okay, so actually, it matters more one's inside more than the external side towards happiness. So I realized, okay, more like the paths of these spiritual giants seems to be accurate. Although I ended up coming to the conclusion that like I think I'll do a number of things in the material world as well. I mean, poker is material, for example. I kind of realized that one thing I realized was that the person's soul is basically manifesting itself. I believe Ramana, what's his name? There's this guy who said you have to realize first that you're already enlightened. Essentially, you're kind of just going on this path, and that your soul is essentially manifesting. Um, and that a lot of your previous actions basically are indications of it. You just have to figure out a way to interpret it, and that is, a view of sorts of what your soul is. Does it make sense?
So I think that your path is going to be both in spiritual and material. I think that you've been gifted with a very powerful intellect. And if you were to be reifying in the way that you would describe it, your soul's purpose, or if you were to crystallize your soul on Earth, that would be through jungle. And jungle has the gift of a powerful intellect and a lot of magnetism when it comes to like people looking up to you and things like that. And that means that very likely that part of your path, at least, is going to be to do is getting a lot of people looking at you and then solving problems using your intellect. So yeah, that makes sense.
Well, both of those are basically what I'm trying to do. Is a bit harder than I thought. But it comes to this idea of the community. I realized that what I think the world needs more of is more people that have decided, okay, I want to do something good, and I want to not, and I want to be free from the constraints of modern society, which I realized that's what the universe provided us poker players. Like we have the ability to independently say we can do something good, which almost no one can. We can independently decide, okay, this is what we want to do, and we're free when we do it. We have the choice to do this.
Feels good. Feels good, man.
So that's why I'm creating this community. I essentially want, and in fact, I realized this myself. I felt quite a bit of compassion for all the people in the 9 to 5s, and that was my original goal. Is that the 9 to 5 is like it's kind of like a version of being shackled in a way.
It's like being in prison.
And so one of my original goals was actually to help free people from that. So that's a big reason why I'm making this Discord, is that I think that I can free other people essentially, and they can do more good.
Using
That
what
makes
path?
sense.
Using poker or using other things?
Poker is one vehicle. I think poker is a good vehicle for the culture. I think the culture of poker is very healthy. For the most part, very healthy. There's not very much cheating on the whole. There's much negative stigmatism against cheating. Um, and people are pretty honest. People critically think. Um, and I think that people who can be good and critically think, like that's a very powerful combination, and be free.
Yeah.
Is I mean that's the reason why I made this podcast, is to garner more of it. It's part of the grander vision.
Yeah. I love it. I love it.
It garners a lot.
Let's have a last topic. I'm getting a little bit
All right,
tired. I should
sure.
eat something.
Got too inspired and too riled up. You got it out of me.
Yeah, you gotta dance it out.
Would you like to say, yeah? Would you like to say more of your own thoughts? I feel like I've been talking a little bit a lot, actually.
No, it's
Little,
perfect.
little lot.
A little lot. I think maybe specifically on a personal level from me to you. I'm really excited to see how you're going to evolve. I'm really excited to see what happens when you find that connection to your authentic self, that inner child, that zest, that part of you that loves to cry and loves to laugh and loves to be in flow. I know it's going to come. You know, you do whatever timing you
I
want
want
it
to
to
do it.
be.
I want to do it actually. I just don't know how to add it into my schedule, man. There's too much shit going on. That's my problem.
It's all about
I
making
think there's value in it.
it's all about making the decision. Like if you make the decision to dedicate yourself towards being as emotionally in
Dude,
touch with
no,
yourself
it's
as you
not just
can.
all about the decision. It's the decision plus what's going on.
Yeah,
It's
no
you
shit.
I
That's
have
what
to
I'm saying. But
strategize.
what I'm saying is that when you make that decision, all of your interactions and thoughts for however long will be based with that decision. And so to inform the logistical stuff as you're acting chaotically in the world, you need some guiding principles. And if one of those guiding principles is to fully reify yourself, to fully connect in with your your trueness of who you are, and to get rid of those trauma reactions or those psychological barriers that were created when you were younger, then that will
Sure.
happen however it happens. It might not be through dancing now, or it might be in 5 years, it might be, but at least you'll have that to point you towards the right direction.